What are you worried people are being naive about?
I'm based in part on my own experience because I, like you, I remember telling my father, who was a rabbi, anti-Semitism was an important part of your rabbinate, but it's not going to be of mine. I was naive. I did not realize that the explosion of anti-Semitism, which is sort of nonpartisan, you see it on the right, you see it on the left, and obviously you see it in jihadi movements. I was naive the extent to which it had purchase in the public, the extent to which there would be people who would sort of be joiners of the movement, even if it didn't accord with the way they were raised or what they believed before. And mostly, I think I was naive at the extent to which governments would turn a blind eye to what was going on in their own countries, as I think Australia clearly has.
Yeah. This raises so many tough issues for Jews and non-Jews because we live in a world, and particularly in the United States, but really around the world, where discrimination and open hatred is denounced and frowned upon. And we think about young people in particular as being part of like a Benetton generation where they don't hate.
Right.
And yet, for some reason, there's a resurgence in hatred towards Jews. There just is. It's obvious. And again, I see it amongst people I know. What's the best explanation of where it's coming from?
It's a different kind of hate from other hates in the following way. I mean, in one sense, hate is hate, but in another sense, Jewish hatred of Jews is almost always, or maybe always, a conspiracy theory. And also, Jews can be hated. They're sort of the shape-shifting hatred of Jews. You can hate them for being communists or capitalists, for being weak and stateless, or for being strong and having a state, for controlling things, for everything from banking to Hollywood to the government. There's a weird dichotomy in the way haters think about Jews. We are both subhuman and superhuman. That's how the Nazis talked about the Jews. They were vermin that controlled the world. And when you think about how many different psychological mechanisms are required, it's like if you have hostility somewhere, the Jews are always a good target. And the last point, I'll make many more points, but the last thing I'll say at the moment is they also are really effective at building coalitions, by which I mean Jews are significant enough to hate, not significant enough that you're going to be overwhelmed if you hate them, because we're a very, very small population. And so you can build, as the Nazis did, but also as you see happening today, you can build a really strong political coalition based just on hating Jews. And that's a very dangerous but almost common phenomenon in the West over the past couple centuries.
Okay, this is a big and hard question.
Yeah.
But I'll do my best to frame it simply. Everything you said just now really resonates with me. It makes a lot of sense. Jews went through World War II. Jews have gone through a lot of periods of being targeted in the 80 years or so since World War II. Jews are pretty smart. Jews are aware of anti-Semitism. How could it be that a group of people determined to assimilate, to not be the subject of hate, who are pretty smart as a group, how could it be that Jews have not solved this?
Well, the simplest answer is because anti-Semitism is not about Jews. It's about the anti-Semite. You can't cure the hatred in someone else's heart. You can't do it. So when we make Jews into the responsible party for anti-Semitism, we're sort of falling into the anti-Semitic trap, even though unwittingly. We're saying it's really the Jews' fault that people hate them.
Hold on, I'm interrupting.
And the Jews should be able to cure it.
Well,
right?
I don't want to be misunderstood.
Right.
I'm not blaming the Jews. I'm not blaming the Jews.
I don't mean that you are.
I know, but I'm just saying you're right that it's on the haters.
Right.
And you're right that curing someone else's hatred is tough. But for instance, prejudice against Black Americans.
Right.
For years, right? Stuff happened in the United States. There's still prejudice, but it's far less than it was.
Yes.
And part of that was a concerted effort on the part of Black and white Americans and others to change it. So I'm not blaming the Jews. I'm just saying this is now an existential problem, literally an existential problem. Jews are being killed for being Jews around the world. They're facing violence and hostility, not on the Jews to solve it, but in the interest of Jews to solve it.
Yes, it's in the interest of Jews to help others to solve it. I would put it that way. And certainly we've made many, many efforts. It is incredibly important that Jews seek out allies. And maybe that is one thing we have not done well enough, is to say to the world, we need your help. Because there are a lot of people of goodwill in this world, and they would be mobilized to help if we asked them. I think the principal criticism I would make of the way Jews respond to anti-Semitism is we don't actually turn to the many, many, many non-Jews in the world who are, I mean, many. The Jews are like 0.01% of the world population, and say, help us combat this because we need you. We can't do this ourselves. And so I think that they, in some ways, on the path to Yad Vashem, which is the Holocaust Memorial in Israel, there are trees planted for righteous Gentiles. And the implicit message is the only answer to that is this. That is, the only answer to hatred are people who will stand up against that hatred. Part of the reason that racial hatred was diminished in America was because white Americans came to understand that we can't do this to our fellow citizens. And the Jewish people need the people of the world of goodwill to do the same, and also to understand one other thing. Recently there were pro-Palestinian bombing plots uncovered. They weren't going to bomb Jewish sites. They were going to bomb businesses. They were going to bomb military sites. The enemies of Jews eventually become the enemies of civilization. We've seen that again and again in history. And so what I would say is the Jews need to be a better wake-up call to civilization, that this is not only about us. You need to help us in part because you're helping yourself.
I couldn't agree more. And after October 7th, and whenever I'm asked by the heads of major Jewish organizations in this country and elsewhere, what can we do different? I say, your board should be no more than half Jews.
Yeah, I think that's great.
You just have to recognize that we have so many allies. They just need to be recruited. Now, to that point, a couple of questions, and I say, help me, Rabbi, in the best sense of help me, Rabbi.
Yeah.
I don't believe that we should be promiscuous in using the word anti-Semite. And I have many colleagues and friends who equate, who, for instance, call the mayor-elect of New York City an anti-Semite. Right. Okay, I just think that word has a particular meaning. Someone who is hostile to Netanyahu, or thinks what Israel did in Gaza despite October 7th was an outrage. If they don't obviously hate Jews, we shouldn't call them anti-Semites. We shouldn't equate questions about Israel policy with anti-Semitism. How do you feel about that debate?
I completely agree with you. I would stand up and applaud, except then I'd be off camera. I mean, we are way, way too easy with that accusation, which is kind of the nuclear bomb.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't, in part because it diminishes the real anti-Semitism that exists out there by calling everybody an anti-Semite, and also because it's unfair to people. You can hate what Israel did in Gaza. That doesn't make you an anti-Semite. Right. I mean, I may completely disagree with your read of it, but if you, I mean, this is a deeper question. I think if you believe Israel shouldn't exist, that has roots in anti-Semitism. But if you think that Israel should have a different government, should behave a different way, should make a different deal with the Palestinians, should have different borders, on and on and on, that's not anti-Semitism. And we shouldn't call it that because, as you said, it's unserious.
Right. All right. So let me give you the case that keeps coming up.
Yeah.
Zohran Mondami, anti-Semite or not?
My read on that is that the jury is out. I think the evidence that makes me uncomfortable to say no, clearly not, is if you can't condemn the language from the river to the sea, which is basically a call for the genocide of the Jewish people, then I think that is a very that's at least opens questions
Right.
to how you feel about Jews.
Right. Okay. So that's my next question. Right. So there's the river to the sea. There's globalized intifada.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the vice president of the United States, right? Who just today on social media was saying you got to differentiate between questioning Israeli policy and anti-Semitism. As you write in your piece, when political leaders fail to condemn rather than just discourage chants of different things, that's not good enough, right?
Right.
So does that make you an anti-Semite? No. Vice President, I don't think is anti-Semitic. You say maybe Mamdani's anti-Semitic because he will only discourage and only belatedly would discourage.
And belatedly would discourage, right.
Right. Only belatedly would discourage. But you've got people in media on the right and on the left who are, again, enablers of anti-Semitism, who won't condemn in the harshest terms, in the clearest terms. Is it the responsibility of people like the Vice President of the United States to not associate with people who say things like that?
It is at least his responsibility to call them out and to let them and not to platform them uncritically. So I mean, look, if you substituted any other group, if you said, China should be free of the Chinese from the south to the north, or France should be free of the French, from the Pyrenees on down, on and on and on, everybody would say you are clearly a hater of this people. It is only the Jewish people that somehow stand in this exemption, and we shouldn't.
Well, it's not a perfect metaphor, but 20 years ago, you publicly supported people who oppose same-sex marriage. I know you did because everybody did, right? Barack Obama didn't support same-sex marriage, and yet that's now considered to be a fundamental human right for.
So I would say, by the way, when I finally announced to my congregation that I was going to do same-sex marriage, it was such a huge explosion that it was on the front page of the New York and LA Times. So I'm still proud that I came out early enough to say that. But yes, you are right. People can absolutely grow. And I wouldn't say that an anti-Semite can never grow out of their anti-Semitism. They can.
Well, no, but I'm not.
But it's our job to encourage them to do that.
I understand, but I'm not talking about anti-Semites. I'm saying the standard of they have to not merely discourage but condemn. The president of the United States the other day, who has a Jewish daughter and Jewish grandkids, he was asked about Tucker Carlson's interview with Nick Fuentes, and he said, it's good to hear different points of view.
And if you ask me, he should have condemned it. Absolutely.
Well,
he should have condemned it.
Should have. But the fact that he didn't, should that be disqualifying? Should anyone who cares about anti-Semitism say if his failure to condemn there means he's not a supporter of Israel, he's not a supporter of the Jewish people?
I think you have to take every person as a total package, not a single statement. I agree, which is one of the reasons why I said about Mamdani that is evidence for it's not dispositive. I wouldn't say because he said that he must be an anti-Semite. So it's a complicated question, and I don't think the same-sex marriage metaphor is a perfect one, but there's no question that every human being has said things they regret. And I used to say about the students at Harvard, look, they're 20 years old, they're 21 years old. Neither you nor I would want to be held to everything we said at 20 or 21. And you have to, especially if you're in my business, you have to believe in the redeemability of human beings. And I do. Even if people that I think are anti-Semitic, that doesn't mean that I believe they can't change. So if you take someone as a whole and you give them the possibility of change, I don't think that it is therefore illegitimate to sometimes say, this is anti-Semitic. I know people who have platformed anti-Semites whom I don't think of as anti-Semites. But I think they're irresponsible, and I think they're doing great damage to public discourse, to Jewish people, and to the wider civilization.
Right. Neither of us wants to condemn Muslims around the world. We don't want to do that. But at the same time, the media whitewashes the role that radical Islam has played in terrorist attacks around the world, including
Yes.
many against Jews. Had the attackers in Australia had in their car MAGA hats rather than ISIS flags, believe me, it would be reported. How do we have a conversation in the press, in the national, international town square about how to deal with radical Islamic jihad against Jews and others without venturing into discrimination and hostility towards Muslims?
I think that this is a crucial question. And so in Australia, for example, you say, look, the guy who stopped heroically, at the risk of his own life, who stopped one of the shooters was Muslim, and the shooters were Muslim. So what the world needs more than anything else right now, in terms of its health and safety, is for Muslims who hate religious violence to stand up against Muslims who promote religious violence, because outside groups cannot do it effectively enough. Right. We need a major Muslim movement worldwide to refuse any kind of recognition, help, anything to Muslims who favor violence, because right now that is a giant civilizational threat. I mean, think about, there are what, over 1 billion Muslims in the world. So if 5% of Muslims support violence, that's a huge number, right? That's tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people, right, depending on how you slice it. Only Muslims can oppose that. And the Western world and the civilized world, Eastern world too, has a tremendous interest in there being a giant Islamic peace movement.
2 of the top 8 Democrats on my list of most likely presidential nominees, the governors of Illinois and Pennsylvania, are Jewish Americans. Would it be good for the cause of beating back anti-Semitism if one of them became the Democratic nominee or became president, or bad?
So I'm prejudiced because Josh Shapiro went to my high school. So I would love to see, somebody from my high school become, I mean, we're talking about a high school where I had 30 people in my graduating class, so it's a tiny little school. But I think that I have faith in America in that someone's religious background, almost anything about them won't matter if they're the right person. And I think if a Jewish president...
Separate question, Rabbi, not whether he can win as a Jew. Would it be good? Would it be good for the Jews, as they say, if we had a Jewish nominee or a Jewish president?
I think
because obviously it could be disastrous.
I think it depends how he does and and whoever the person is, he or she. I think it depends how they do and who they are. It could be either way. I hope for a world in which that person would be judged not as a Jew, but just as a president. But I don't think we're there yet.
All right, I'm going to close with a mini sermon to parents, including some Jewish parents whose kids, say 15 to 25, are hostile to Jews, hostile to Israel. And the schools can try to help and, community, whatever, but really it's on the parents. What would you say to parents who have kids who are anti-Semitic, anti-Jew, anti-Israel? What should they do?
The single most important thing for anybody to understand is that in every group, there are human beings of every type. And it doesn't matter what the group is, whether it's Jewish or Black or Asian or Latino, it doesn't matter. And to paint any group with a broad brush of evil says much more about the character of your child than it does about the character of the group. And so I think the best way to the extent that it is possible to solve this is for people to actually have human encounters with other people and to see who they are. Since we're in the Hanukkah season and we read the story of Joseph in Hanukkah, and you said something about being a rabbi, I'll end with a sermon. It's only 2 seconds, which is Joseph in the Bible tells his brothers his dreams and they hate him for it and they throw him in a pit. And then he ends up in Egypt where he interprets Pharaoh's dreams, and as a result, he becomes the viceroy of Pharaoh. And the rabbis ask, what's the difference? He falls by dreams and he rises by dreams. And the answer is he falls when he can only hear his own dreams. And he rises when he learns to hear the dreams of others. And I would say you have to teach your child to listen to the dreams of others and to understand that they also have dreams and that they also want to do things with their lives and with the world. And if you start to learn to listen to the dreams of others, you will discover that ultimately, I think most human beings have the same dream.
If you're using an ordinary smartphone, you surely have noticed those creepy ads that pop up on the phone and seem to know exactly where you've been, what you've bought, even maybe who you've been talking about. Yeah, you've probably asked yourself, is my phone monitoring me? The truth is, your smartphone, regular smartphone, is constantly collecting and leaking data without your knowledge or your consent. Every day, it builds up a detailed profile of your whole life, where you are, your habits, your interests, even the people you communicate with. And all that information, it gets funneled into an invisible marketplace where it's constantly tracked, analyzed, and sold to the highest bidders. It's really annoying, but that's not all it is. It's also invasive, and it's happening nonstop as you're on your phone. But there's an alternative now. The Up Phone by Unplugged is totally different. This phone, it's designed to protect your privacy from the ground up. No hidden trackers, no data mining, just a secure, streamlined smartphone experience that puts you back in control. Whatever you're doing on the phone, you could be texting, browsing, using apps. The Up Phone ensures your personal information, it stays personal, it stays yours. It's the phone for anybody who is done being watched. If you're ready to take back your digital privacy, this is the way to do it. Visit unplug.com/Mark. You'll get $25 off a phone case with a purchase of the phone. Learn more and order your Up Phone today. Again, go to unplugged.com/Mark, because your life, your data should be yours, not theirs.